well, we'd love to have your support. So I am really delighted to have Eric and Mary here tonight to talk about this incredible situation that they got themselves, into on little fault of their own, hitting something that they didn't see underwater, and caused a pretty amazing event to happen in the North Atlantic this summer. But to introduce them and to talk a little bit about Eric and Mary, I have Lydia Mullen, who's the managing editor of Sail Magazine, and editor-in-chief of Multi-Hull Power and Sail. In her 7 years of sail, she's published 350 articles, including Marine Journalism's Best Adventure Essay in both 2023 and 2024. I assume that adventure essay had something to do with tonight. She's a graduate of the Magenta Project Mentorship Program, and she was Alliance's bow person for this Bermuda race, and is uniquely, obviously, positioned as both media and crew member of Alliance to moderate this discussion tonight. She sailed in several events on Alliance prior to the 24 Newport to Bermuda, and in total, Lydia has raced around 1,500 coastal and offshore miles with Mary and Eric. Ladies and gentlemen, Lydia Mullen.
Hello, thank you guys. Sorry, can you hear me? I have a little tiny mouse voice. Good, perfect. As Brad mentioned, I have been at Sail Magazine for 7 years, and pretty much every issue we have a seamanship column. So I have read a lot about what can go wrong out there and how people respond to it. And I can very confidently say that Mary and Eric are some of the best when it comes to responding to those sorts of incidents. I feel like I've heard it all, and I feel like I've never heard of anyone who's had such a textbook reaction to it. So really, I think we were extraordinarily lucky to have had such good leadership on both this incident happened to. I feel like I've said this 100 times, but of all the boats in Newport Bermuda this year that this could have happened to, I think we were lucky it happened to ours because we were probably most prepared to deal with it. I first met Mary and Eric in March of 2018 in North Atlantic. It was my very first business trip with the magazine, and we reconnected in 2022, and I sailed with them during the 2023 season and the first half of the 2024 season. Obviously, did not really get to the second half of the season.
Have fun with this.
And we were...
And remember, bickering is good. Yes, everybody.
And I think we were very lucky, but we were also very prepared. And that's really thanks to their leadership. I do also want to acknowledge the other crewmates from Alliance while we're out here this evening. We have Bill Neller, who's here. Not here with us this evening is Eddie Doherty, Connor Julia, Sam Webster, and Wendy Schmidt. And we are supported by our
Joe Cooper, you guys talk to.
would-be return delivery crew, Lisa Molinari and Lisa Schmidt, who are here. And so thanks to them supporting us, and those are some of the other folks that just sort of acknowledgement for their participation in this and their response. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Eric and Mary.
So I use this, even though I have this?
You use both.
I use both. Okay, all right, so here we go. This is not where we're, okay. Okay, so this is, the picture we have here is Alliance as we're exiting Narragansett Bay during the start of the Bermuda race. You can tell we're a lot of people on the leeward side where we had very light winds, but we had a very good start, and everyone could find us because we had those bright yellow shirts on. And the reason for those bright yellow shirts is we had a bright yellow spinnaker, which fortunately, brand new, fortunately we didn't have on board, so we didn't lose it. So if anyone needs a spinnaker for a 40-foot boat, let us know. Okay. So this is not the...
I thought it's the same one, so.
This is not the right presentation.
It's not?
No. Oh. So Brad said bickering was okay here, so can I give him a hard time now because he didn't open the right presentation? We can go with it, but
I think it's the right one.
no, it's not.
Okay.
All right, so I think this is a presentation we used at ESIC. Yeah. Essex Yacht Club a few weeks ago, so we're good with it. Sailing offshore, we briefed this at Bristol Yacht Club back in the fall, and people thought that we were trying to, the message was not good, that it was hard to go offshore, it was dangerous to go offshore, but really what we want to talk about is, it's beautiful, there's a lot of good things, beautiful sunsets, beautiful marine life, but, there's risk. There's risk in everything you do. We were skiing last week, there's risk. You just have to be prepared and you have to manage the risk. So about me and Eric. So I learned to sail as a kid. I learned to sail up in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and we're missing the slide about Alliance, I think. But I learned to sail up in Newbury, Massachusetts, and I bought my first boat when I was 22 years old, just after I graduated from Massachusetts Maritime Academy. I have been a civilian with the Navy for almost 40 years, getting ready to retire soon. 25 plus years of racing. Most of that was coastal, one design, around the buoys. A lot of that was with Bill Neller. Eric is a U.S. Naval Academy graduate. He learned to sail through the Naval Academy Offshore Training Program, career submarine officer. He retired after 30 years of the silent service. And he's been racing for a very long time, too. He's got a little bit more offshore miles than me. We actually met racing on Bill's boat. And then in 2020, for me, I had been doing the one design, coastal, nearshore racing for a long time, and I felt like I wasn't learning and progressing anymore, and I knew that I wanted to eventually do cruising, long-distance cruising, so I thought it was a natural progression to go learn, and boy did I learn. I think it was Bill that said to me we needed a boat computer so that we could do navigation. I'm like, why? We have B&G Zeus's. Why do I need a computer? Well, I learned a lot, and, this is a computer we bought. So I learned expedition software, which is not easy to learn, and a lot about weather. So a lot to learn. Okay, so our philosophy with Alliance is look good, have fun, place well. We are a Corinthian crew. Mixed gender crew, obviously, as Lydia said. We were 5 men and 4 women for this cruise. Young, there was a few of us that were a little bit over 50, and then a bunch of them that were anywhere from 22 to 32 years old. So our youngest was 22. She missed her graduation from Massachusetts Maritime Academy. Her name is Mary too, to join the race, and her mom was the one that was going to do the delivery return back with us. So, so Corinthian, and we're all about learning, we're all about safety. So, on from there.
Yes, I don't know I'm not the most computer savvy person, so
Obviously, since he opened the wrong presentation.
I was on a computer. I don't know. That important this stuff. We'll go with the flow, but the key information's here. And I do want to point out that the parents of the Schmidts are here, so recognize. One of the things we like bringing, as Mary kind of talked about from philosophy, bringing youth into offshore sailing. She was a great add to our team. And then as a person in charge, goes back to my Navy career, it's the health and care of your people. Even Bill, who's a little bit older than me, but, I know Cindy and his families, and Mary and I felt, an absolute obligation to set our program up right, to bring everybody home safely, and that was very important to us. And I do want to put a shout out to Team Banter. Matt Gimple in particular was my hero in the 2022 race. That was my first offshore race as a person in charge, and Matt was a true afterguard, that I could go and have a private conversation and say, hey, how's this going? What do you think? And he would provide that advice. So thank you very much to the Gimples and Tori. I look forward to further adventures with you all. So everything after midnight happens so smoothly. So I had finally, I think, just fallen asleep. I finally felt relaxed enough, 36 hours in a race. I kind of migrated where I sometimes sleep on deck. Things were going smooth enough, didn't have any squalls. So I kind of migrated on the nav station. That was uncomfortable. And I finally just laid down on the deck and then to be awoken at 02:48 based on the instruments to a loud kabang and thought we had lost the rig. So we had 4 people on deck, 5 below sleeping, including Mary and I. It was a beautiful full moon night. This is one of Lydia's pictures taken, I think, before she went below. Lydia was actually at the helm at the time of the event. So it was just one of those epic nights in the Gulf Stream, and then this happens to us. So the unexpected. So you kind of see the picture on the left side there. We're in this Gulf Stream meander. There's the E-perb that went off, and I will tell you, one of the points of conversation is about E-perbs. E-perbs historically have just been satellite-based. Our new E-perb, which we bought in 2023, actually had an AIS feature, which was extremely critical in our rescue. And notice the picture to the right shows an image of a video taken about 40 minutes into the event, where you can see here, this is the upper root bearing, which was destructively removed out of the hull structure. That rotation forward is what caused the lower bearing structure to penetrate the hull. And, you know, as we updated here, we were literally about halfway to Bermuda, outside of normal rescue zones by Coast Guard assets. And we actually were asking Mr. Yakov, did you hit something, a rock or something? He said, no, it's 2.5 miles deep. So, and actually, there was another skipper of a boat noted that they noted a log floating in the Gulf Stream. So you never know what will happen. But the fact is, we had catastrophic damage and flooding to the boat, and that's what we had to deal with at 3 a.m. So this is a picture, or image, go ahead, play it. So this is the rudder compartment after steering, so Lydia was up forward. So you can see the rudder stock rotating. This is, I think, pretty helpful in understanding what happened. And actually, you can see, so we actually have a deck plate where the emergency toilet connects in, but I think it actually ripped out of the hull, which you can't see in this video, but that's what happened. And maybe I'll ask Lydia, because Lydia was on the helm when this happened. What would you like to share with the audience about what happened?
Yeah, I was driving. I've been driving for about 40 minutes, just under 40 minutes at the time. And it was a really beautiful night, and we had some slightly bigger waves. We were sort of surfing, but it was a pretty smooth ride. And then suddenly it was just like a big bang, and I felt it in the wheel, and it just, everything sort of shuddered. And I know below there were some questions about whether we lost the rig, whether there was fire, because the fiberglass smell of burning was just so strong. And above, Bill was right next to me. He was trimming main at the time, and he was sort of like, get off the thing. I'm pulling up the board. He knew exactly what was going on, what to look for right away. And it was immediately apparent we had lost steering. Julie and I ran forward to pull down the jib because we wanted to just slow the boat down a little bit. We decided to keep cleaning up for most of the time that we were on there, just to keep some stability, because we did have those big waves. And yeah, that's it. Anything else you want me to?
That was. Yeah, I asked Lydia to present that because, like I said, Mary and I were both sleeping. So, Bill and Lydia probably had the best situation awareness in the audience of what really happened. And truth be told, it wasn't until, we finally decided to abandon ship, about 40-ish some minutes into it, that I actually went topside to really understand what was going on. I mean, I obviously was in communication with the team topside, but Mary was dealing with the communications, because actually when I went back, there's a little cubby hole in the starboard quarter where I could go back and look at what had happened. About 90 seconds into the event, when I crawled back out, Mary confronts me with a very look, like, is this a pom-pom call, Eric? I said, no, this is a mayday. And she just went into action. So I was listening to all the communications, including with banter. You know, like I knew boats were coming, and we were digging out. We had carried 2 emergency DC pumps. I think that might be on the next image. So we actually, thanks to Bill, there's a long story with Bill, but one of the first priorities I had when we bought Alliance was I made this little cigarette lighter, 1,000-gallon per hour pump with a hose because of his experience, because knowing that Mary and I were in a double hand race, you know, do you sit tied to a manual pump or do you set up something electric? So we had a 1,000-gallon per hour pump, which we used. And then for the model of Halifax, we actually had this Rule 3700, which actually had a collapsible hose, which is something you need to think about because the ship was up there trying to keep the kinks out of that hose to get that water pumping off. So that capability on the boat, which is was above and beyond for the 2024 Newport Marine Race requirement, bought us time. So here's kind of a timeline. So we basically had, I think about 30 minutes into it, I recognized that, in hindsight, I think in the first 2 minutes, I recognized we were mortally wounded. But these are sequence of events to get communications. You know, in fact, Joe Cooper, was Joe Cooper here? So at one point, Mary's got the phone out, talking to Joe Cooper. There's a VHF comm, and Mary hands me the phone to Coop, because she had a VHF comm, because that was more important. I said, hey, Coop, how's it going? And very quick sequence of events. So the communications discipline put in place after the 2022 event, from our perspective, was extremely valuable in our rescue. And I will also say that I know Mary was coordinating getting boats to us. I had not thought about a life raft transfer. Yeah, question.
What was the burning smell?
So we think, so that destructive release of energy of that upper bearing, that's what caused that, this very distinctive burning smell below decks.
Yeah, it was only below decks, it didn't smell it up above.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're grinding on fiberglass, how it smells? That's right.
Yeah.
That's how it smells.
Okay.
And one thing about that rule pump, it's not shown in the picture here, it had alligator clips on it that we clipped right to the house batteries.
What's next? I don't know. Next.
You went one too many. There you go.
All right, so the next phase was the life raft transfer. So that, the beautiful sailing night that Lydia described, that she was really enjoying on the helm, all of a sudden became the obstacle. So we had to launch the life raft off an open transom boat. And our lead watch captain, who was on the deck at the time, when I came topside, as we're getting ready to finish that procedure, we dropped the sails. He looks at me and says, this gives me a look like, really? Like, throw it in, make sure the painter's hooked, and pull the line, right? That's what you get trained to do. So then there's the next video, which we'll show here briefly. I mean, we put everything in the life raft as you would recommend. So that, you'll see my arms come out of this life raft. So this is from a view from Kaylee. They had to go on 3 times. They used, you'll see the throw line. That I then tied onto the life raft, and then they actually use their primary winch to winch us up. What was very important to them, and this is what is not typically discussed at safety at sea, is what's the rescue boat's perspective. You always think about getting yourself rescued or to the Coast Guard asset. So, so this is Kaylee's perspective of rescuing us. So that they became the rescue asset. They did a very professional job. It was very clear command and control. I think Lydia actually had a bruise on her arm from the breath grip to get her pulled up on the boat, which you'll see in the Sail Magazine article. But a very different perspective.
Talk about the drogue.
Oh yeah, the other aspect Mary just mentioned is, so we actually transferred communications to the life raft. Eddie Doherty was on the VHF, as Mary and I were topside. Very specific question asked by Kaylee was, do you have any lines? So I cut away the pair. There was no line from my perspective, but on the backside of the life raft, unbeknownst to me, just didn't really recognize it, was the drone. You can kind of see it in the one video. So that they didn't foul their pop, right? So that's a very important aspect of being a rescue boat. And I'll tell you, this gentleman, Austin, tremendous ship handler.
Talk about the whole
He
thing.
was on an envelope.
Yeah, so the Austin, he, his dad, and his brother, very experienced folks. And then Andrew Halliburton was the navigator. So they were just so instrumental, and their seamanship was amazing in rescuing us.
It's giving me the goosebumps. I will never forget that moment in time.
I'm not quite sure what this is.
Well, that's just from the video. No. Yeah, so just a couple reminder slides here, from a rescue boat perspective. I think one of the high-level lessons learned was who's in charge of communication. So I knew, in my mind, Mary was on the radio talking to other boats that were coming, but who is the on-scene commander, as we call it in the Navy and the Coast Guard? And 7 people on a 40-foot boat to 16, that's obviously a stress factor. So the plan was to get on Kaylee and then do a subsequent transfer to Banter. But in the last transfer on the the ladder on the aft end of Kaylee punctured the upper wing of the life raft. And fortunately, the level heads on Kaylee said, nope, you're stuck with us. So, and then, Banter was our buddy boat for the rest of the race, because we now had 16 people on a boat with, I think it was a 10-person life raft. So, and in fact, if you can see in the lower right, Kaylee did have an upper rudder bearing issue that developed perhaps due to the additional stress of the 2,000 pounds added, but fortunately they had a drill and some screws, and they were able to mend that so that we made it to Bermuda successfully. Anything else on this? Next.
There is one thing I will note. We said the upper ring of the life raft punctured. We had a Winslow ultralight, so it gets to be ultralight. I think it weighed 75 pounds, easy for people even like me and Lydia to manhandle if we have to. But I do think that going forward in the new offshore regulations, that life raft, because it just has the 2 rings, is not going to be allowed in some of the for the world sailing requirements. I read it briefly, but.
And Mary's into the technical details. So if you look at the ISO requirements, so you got to pay attention and pull that thread. That's what Mary's referring to. But if you, truth be told, with Winslow Life Raft, if you use their products in a rescue, you get a new one. So Minerva's got a new life raft.
Next one.
Next. I think the most important piece for the audience, so there's, I call it boat preparation and people preparation, right? So there's a whole line of effort we had when Mary and I bought the boat of how we're going to prepare the boat and prepare the people. And a key part of that is really, building the team. You just can't throw together people on the boat. You really want to have a worked up plan. We did monthly Zooms. I think with post-COVID, Zoom is a pretty easy opportunity. Lydia was up in Boston, so was Sam. So we had a crew located around. I know the Gimples have also used Zoom for their preparation piece. And it's more than just safety at sea, right? Safety at sea is a step. and it's an experience. But there are products out there through various organizations, U.S. Sailing,
Storm Trisel,
Storm Trisel Club,
CCA.
and as Mary lets me know, I sign homework, right? So got to get the crew looking at the material. And Lisa, she knows this, right?
Lisa.
Lots of reading.
Lisa and Lisa both did lots of reading as they prepared to do the return delivery, right? And then it's also, like I said, our philosophy was about developing the next generation, and part of that is empowering them. And although we had done the inspection in part for Bermuda, we were able to self-inspect. I tasked Connor and Sam, okay, here's a checklist, go inspect, let me know when you're done. And I actually found one thing I missed. So once again, they knew and were confident in the preparation. So it's a people preparation was probably the most important single factor that resulted in our success.
So as you see, not only did we assign a lot of homework, we did a lot of on the water preparation. The storm sails up, the collision mat, which wasn't very beneficial in this particular incident. The life sling, we went out, we deployed the drogue, we did it all. It's, there's a checklist that you have to go through, and we went through it multiple times with our crew.
And I will note, one of my favorite pictures of Lydia is one day after practice, she goes, I want to go up the mast. I'm like, okay, I'm the only one that's been up the mast, so we hauled Lydia up the mast, so she was familiar with it. So it was awesome.
Bill's got up.
And Bill's got up. That takes a little more work, Bill.
I have not.
What's next?
Is that at sea or at the dock?
At the dock. I think, to me personally, we actually did carry a hard hat on Alliance. I do know in a previous race that someone had a concussion and some digits. Me personally, I don't like putting people up the mast at sea. There's just, unless you absolutely need to, there's a lot of risk.
Caitlin went up.
What?
Caitlin went up once at sea.
This is responsive, I think what's important, this key decision, right? Right? It's an AA, stabilize the boat, get things under control, make sure people understand what's important and set priorities. So, next slide.
So let's look at that little, this is so that the companionway coming down is there. This is like in the galley area right when you come down. And those are the two hoses. You can see that lighter colored one is kind of a hard corrugated type hose. That's the one that we had hooked up to the 1,000 gallon per hour pump. And then the blue one is the one that was hooked up to the 3,700 gallon pump. And that's kind of like, a collapsible hose, and Mary kind of held it so that it would go over the side. But so you can see, and obviously the pumping capacity is degraded by, having to get it up 5 feet and out. And also, one of them is a corrugated hose. So just wanted to point out what that picture is.
Mary, what was the diameter of the hoses?
2 inches.
I think the white one is probably an inch and a half. I think the blue one's 2.5 to maybe 3 inches on the, you'd have to look at the pump. But remember, we also had, I think our Bill's pump was a 250 gallon per hour pump. And Bill at one point, he was pumping, which took the suction from the engine compartment. So, and from my perspective, right, is water level continued to rise, given all the water moving off, I'm like, we're not making progress here. I'm a submariner, so flooding is when the water goes in is greater than the water goes out, severe flooding. And like I said, 30 minutes, I recognized that we weren't making progress in the right direction. And I knew, listening to Mary and conversations that, and then I could see banter, I could see Kaylee's lights. We actually turned on all the lights on Alliance to make sure that we were well visible. And truth be told, retired Coast Guard Admiral, just prior to us leaving the boat, said, hey, can you shoot a flare so we can see it? I said, my thought process was that risk reward, shooting a flare at the last moment was probably not the right idea as we get ready to go to life raft. So anyway.
We talk a little bit about the transfer, how we did it.
Yeah, what's the next slide? So the transfer, literally, so all our standard procedures was everyone's either at night, tied in, and and during daytime, you would put your safety harness around your waist. So when we unclipped, and Lydia and Mary could validate, that when we launched the life raft and pulled it up next to the boat, we literally unclipped from the lines and hopped into the life raft. And you have a great statement in one of your articles, talking about the tumbling.
Oh, yeah, so when you climb into a life raft from the water, like you might do at safety at sea, you sort of have a nice soft landing because you're coming up over the side. But when you're coming down from a boat and you're stepping into it, the floor is quite soft. It's basically just a big water balloon. So all of us hit the ground and the momentum carrying forward. And I know several of us took a little bit of a tumble into our teammates in the boat. So just a word of caution, if you were to take that step, just take it very carefully because we're sliding around a bit.
Yeah, so the two strongest, youngest men were holding the life raft, and it took a lot for them to hold. You've got the drogue back there, you've got 4 to 5 foot seas. Eric and I wanted to be the last people off the boat, but that's really not practical, switching out the 2 people that are holding the life raft. So, everyone got in, and then talk a little bit about getting out onto Kaylee.
Yeah, so once we were all on the life rafts, we actually, as I think I mentioned earlier in one of the slides, we actually we carried these blue 3-gallon bricks of water. You're required by waste requirements to have a gallon per person as reserve. So we took that amount of water with us in the life raft. So at one point, I think we passed it down to Lydia and whoever. Cut away the painter line once we were all in the life raft and moving away. Then, like I said, Kaylee circled around us past that throw line, which we then tied off to, there was like a little handle on the bottom of the edge of the raft so that they could pull us up. And then, as you see in that sea state from the video, right, there's this relative motion between the 2 boats, and literally in a surge, you surge up, and I forget what the order was, getting out of it. I think Bill was the last one in the life rafts. But then we just kind of like momentum moving people forward after they clipped in on board Kaylee. So we were clipped in getting off the boat. We disconnected and jumped in the life raft getting off the boat is the key point, and all that.
Hey, Eric. The whole thing on clipping in, could you explain there the energy required by the folks on Kaylee to get us into the boat? Because I think that's important. How they grab you.
Oh yeah. So as I said, literally it's like death grip, as Lydia knows, and it was a welcome death grip at that point to really haul you out of the boat.
There's one person on either side.
Yeah. Right. And once again, this is a thing for depending on your boat configuration, right? So both boats were open transom boats. So we now have a sailboat 426, and it's a closed transom boat with a platform. So you have to think about, and I thought about this, if we were in the same situation as Kaylee was, would we want the life raft kind of like you do for a man overboard? Would you want to bring the life raft alongside the leeward or leeward, and then how do you haul people up for that 3-4 feet, given the sea state? So that's something to think about and something to talk about moving forward.
Yeah, we were all out of there pretty quick, but to do it 9 people on the side of the boat, that would have taken a lot of time.
And literally, we were only in the life raft less than 20 minutes, right? It was, the whole event took an hour and 15 minutes. It was the last 20 minutes when we did the transfer, so.
Nobody in the water.
And no one in the water, no life jackets went off. There was a brief moment in time as Mary and I were the last ones below. Like I looked at Mary and said, got a few minutes? What are we forgetting? And we actually took, we had a medical kit in a dry bag. We actually dumped it out. We put this boat computer, my car keys and a few other, and Bill's computer, his cell phone, all in a dry bag for transfer. And then, and this is another piece, I mean, we do have a couple people here who are on Gungadin. I started out in my skivvies and a shirt because it was hot down below, right? I found my shorts, I found my shoes, found my life jacket as I got myself together after waking up. And then in this moment with Mary, I'm looking like, I'm going on a boat. I don't know if I'm going north, I don't know if I'm going south. But I probably need my foul gear. And I pulled that out of the locker, thank goodness. And I also pulled out a spare life jacket that we happen to carry a spare offshore life jacket in case we needed it. And this is another point, like you think about in your dish bag, having your passports, medicine, all those items, but what do you need? And Mary actually used, we had a couple of those little
Silver thermal blankets.
yeah.
The silver thermal space blankets. We had.
Mary actually used it because she was like wet, cold on Kaylee, and so when you don't want to compound the issue, you got to think about those items. And we actually lost, I think, 2 offshore jackets in the transfer, and we actually had one of our watch captains get minorly hypothermic because he was wet. And as Lydia knows, Kaylee was not a dry boat. So things you don't normally think about that, I think is a high level learning that, and a toothbrush. I would love to have a toothbrush.
Diaper free.
All right, that's enough, Bill.
All right, so this picture on the left here is at 522. There was a boat that passed Alliance at 522. The last ping, tractor ping, was on the lower right at 530, which was when we suspect she sank. Obviously, she's bow down, rudder up, and this is the other piece, right? In the last minutes or seconds of getting off the life raft, the EPIRB, which had an AIS pinger on it, was still tied into the life raft. So we were supposed to do a transfer to another boat, but then all of a sudden we're not doing that. So now you end up with this derelict life raft, which you did puncture to make sure hopefully it would sink, but it still has an EPIRB AIS signal pinging, which did distract a couple other boats. And so from the race committee perspective, I think the high level learning there is, you can see there that it was pretty clear retired, boat abandoned due to loss of flooding, but from the navigator communications perspective, did they really know that? Because they're paying attention to the information flow, which gets to the communications piece, right? So.
Anything else?
What's next?
So what's next? He anticipated this. Anyhow, I am going to go through some of the backup just to show you Banter and Kaylee because it was kind of got moved out of this brief. But this is Minerva. So this is our new boat. Parker sold it to us, and it's a Sabre 426. When we bought it, it was named Centurion, which is a Roman soldier. We renamed her Minerva, which is the Roman goddess of wisdom and warfare, strategy and tactics, and obviously we both had long careers with the Navy, and strategy and tactics is so important in sailboat racing. So a little bit different. She's a cruising boat, and we're going cruising. We have high hopes maybe of someday doing maybe a transatlantic, but staying local for a bit. So you'll see her around. We're gonna emblem with the owl there is going to be about as big as a Centurion is on that boat. So the other thing too, Alliance. Let's see, I'll go. Okay, so Lydia, these are all her articles. You can just Google Sail Magazine and Lydia Mullen and you'll find them all. So the articles about this race, and then we had a very interesting Annapolis to Newport race in 2023 that Lydia wrote a great article about called Baptism by Fire. That won one of those awards as well, so you'd be able to find that online. I really just these were some of the more detailed slides. We had modified this presentation. We gave one down at Essex Yacht Club in conjunction with Carter Bacon from Solutions, so we moved some of this stuff to backup. But I really just wanted to show you, this is Kaylee. I don't know if we have a picture of the stern, but this is Kaylee, the J121 with a crew of 7. Very interesting, at the beginning of the race, we were in the same class, we were kind of sailing near each other, and we asked them whether they drank Harpo or Guinness. And their response was, Heineken. And sure enough, at the end of the race, as we're motoring back into, Bermuda, we had Heineken. And at that point, Eric was really regretting that we didn't take the handle of Goslings that we had on Alliance with us into the life raft. This is banter. So we can't say enough about banter. Banter is owned by the Gimple family. Eric has known them for a very long time. And Alliance did the 2022 Newport to Bermuda race, and we had Matt and his daughter Megan with us. And they were just great. Matt was my watch partner. He taught me so much. And we also did a Ida Lewis distance race with 4 out of 5 Gimples on our boat. So they came to us, they talked to us on the phone, and they stuck with us the entire race. They were like right on the hip of Kaylee. Kaylee continued to race, and they were right there with us. If they could have gone faster, they weren't going to go faster because they were going to stay right with us. So that's banter.
And I'll just say for one of the other aspects learned out of this is, so we get on Kaylee, and I personally broke down, right? Because I'm trying to absorb what the heck just happened and where we're going. But this gets back to, PTSD and just calming the crew. But I can't tell you how much each of the crew members have talked about the importance of having that buddy boat there, having a welcoming reception by the crew of Kaylee. Hey, just go down, do what you need to do, decompose. Something to think about if you're a rescue boat, right? You until you live it, you just don't know what it's like.
Okay, just just a little bit about Alliance. It's a partnership, actually. Eric and I own the boat, but one of the major reasons we named it is USS Alliance was a Continental Navy 36-gun sailing frigate that was actually built in Merrimack, Massachusetts. And I learned to sail on the Merrimack River in Massachusetts. And see, no one's making fun of my accent like you expected them to. So, yes, I grew up north of Boston. But the other thing too is, that ship was named for, U.S. and France during that war were great allies, and so it was named for the Treaty of Alliance with France. All the J122s were built by J-boats in France. So. That's won the last battle of the Revolutionary War. So that's, people just think that it's Alliance because we were a partnership. So we'd like to tell you there's a little bit more behind that story. So, I think that's it.
I think the last, it's like it's the boat owners and crews, it's a philosophy, right? Always learn more, right? That's why I said safety at sea is not an end-all be-all. That's a starting point. It's an experience. It's about networking with the community. Like I said, between me personally, between Bill and Matt, I've learned a tremendous amount about boat maintenance and seamanship, as I've learned from all of you and knowing Coop and everyone here in the audience, right? So it's continuous learning and be constructively dissatisfied if you're going to be complacent, right? And I think that's important for the crew to know that you're always seeking for the next level, whether it be the maintaining the boat to the next level, what could go wrong, to hey, how do you rely on everyone? And I think the word trust in going offshore. I mean, there's a great picture of boats offshore. It's a lot of fun, but you have to have that trust, and you have to build that trust, which is part of this always keep learning piece. So,
Hand it over to Lydia.
say again.
Hand it over to Lydia.
So.
Thank you, Eric and Mary. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A now. So if somebody has a question, you can raise your hand or I can get started with the mic. Yeah, right here.
How fast are you going when you hit whatever you hit?
So speed to the water, and that one picture you can see, we're doing about 8-ish knots through the water, but we're in a 4-knot-ish Gulf Stream push, so 12 knots-ish over ground.
And back right here.
Can you talk to J-boats about anything they could do to improve the design?
The questions were, they talked to J-boats afterwards about the design and anything that might change.
Yeah, so James in the back, I'll point him out, he's leading the structural review, so when Mary and I got back, we actually had a meeting with Jeff and Alan Johnstone. The one thing I learned is, if you look at the 121, the boat we ended up on, when they were designing that boat, it's a specific topic, because they were kind of competing against the Open 40. If you look at the Open 40 design, it has a crash bulkhead forward and a watertight compartment aft, and that's why the 121 has an aft watertight compartment. And truth be told, when I first got Alliance, and I was looking at structural vulnerabilities, I actually thought to myself, do I glass off that aft end? But that was just a thought. So clearly, something to think about as a boat owner. I think the structural report will show a lot more things that they've uncovered and things for boat owners to consider. As I look at the Sabre 426 now, I look at, one of my outstanding actions is to email the Sabre designers, like, how does the rudder fail, and what does that mean from a structural perspective?
One slide that didn't get put in that I just want to bring up is both Banter and Kaylee were awarded the Hansen Rescue Award by U.S. Sailing.
Did Kaylee rescue it all under sail?
The question was whether Kaylee rescued us under sail.
So they came back to us under sail. They had to turn around and come kind of back upwind against the Gulf Stream towards us, and they did that under sail, and then they dropped their sail and cleared their lines, made sure there was no lines in the water, and they didn't want to compound a failure, and then they actually were under motor when they got us.
And I'll tell you, we obviously got to know the crew of Kaylee pretty well over the next 2.5 or so days. But I can't credit their navigator enough with his prompt response and decisions and communications along with the crew of Kaylee. They did not expect it that night, right? So they just got a boat, we're the closest, and made a decision to go get us. And I think the crew of Alliance is forever thankful, as well as to the crew of Banter and others who responded in that night, because they said, we all get trained on how to abandon ship or take care of problems you have, or the Coast Guard pick you up. They said the concept of a life raft transfer, I don't know how I came to that conclusion, that that's how I'm going to get my people from here to there, but I did over that first 30 minutes as the situation developed.
And interestingly enough, there was an incident as well with Gunga Din, and that transferred to Kaylee, and they also did a life raft transfer.
Did you have engine power for a while, and what about the batteries and pumps?
Yeah, the question was whether we had engine power and how the batteries and the pumps.
So that's a great question, and I think as you look at the other two sinkings that occurred in the race to Bermuda and return, engine power is an issue. We did not have a fuel issue, but we did not run the engine, and I will tell you in hindsight, in those first 40 minutes, I'm probably the most aware on the boat of the state of battery charge. I did not think about that. Clearly, as Mary discussed, we had a plug-in water pump, we had a clip-on battery water pump, but did I know what the discharge rate is and time left on the battery? I don't know. some people will ask, well, did you consider like taking the suction off the raw water and pump water? But that's only like a gallon per minute, so it was insignificant. So in hindsight, I should have thought about power, because that buys you time. But as we know with Bill, he was pumping water out of the engine compartment. So had we started the engine, I'm not sure what would happen with the alternator. And before I left below decks, I actually went, we have 2 house batteries on the 122. On the port side settee, I actually pulled up the cover to see where the water proximity was. Probably had about 8 inches, 10 inches. And that's at the 40-minute point. So I don't know how much longer it would have run, but clearly, power is a consideration depending on why you need it. Over.
That's why we got off coming in.
Yeah.
Battery power.
Yeah.
Couldn't go over that without recharging battery more than
One
installed.
at a time.
You hit it.
I will say we were pretty, we had a logbook, and every 2 hours we were recording, checking out battery state and recording it. We never let it get below 60% without charging.
I think Coop's got a question, Lydia.
Yeah, guys. So Eric, you come out of the, best military training in the world. Can you sort of parallel some of your training and experiences in driving a submarine to your mindset for the planning of your preparing the crew? You try to do the submarine and you got to put water out of it.
So Don Sagmeister, when he reached out to me in Bermuda, submariner, I think I said in the video, I was not retired. I'm not going to submerge again. I think hopping into life raft, I didn't do that. But anyway, I think it's back to the fundamental philosophy that Mary and I set, right? It's about proper planning. Planning from either navigation, weather, preparation, crew, boat, all those things, I think were a critical element. And if you remember, when we got back in July, there was a boat in Italy that sank, right? And I thought this was personally extremely impactful to me, that the boat captain of that boat was charged with manslaughter. So, I look at, my friends, my family, our boat crew, I personally, based on my Navy experience, take that very personally. And I need to bring the crew back safely. And so that was an extremely personal impact to me, to make sure that we did everything right going forward.
Yeah, we have mothers like Lisa trusting us with their 22-year-old daughter. Lydia's father, we don't take that lightly, that we're entrusted with lives of people. So a lot of training with the people, but I also want to stress what we did with the boat. The boat was a 2007, when we got it, we did extensive work on it, all new running rigging, standing rigging. We had it up at International Marine up in Bristol, getting any sort of issues around the keel worked on. Extensive. We dropped the rudder, replaced the rudder bearing. We had it inspected multiple times by a marine surveyor. Some of you might know Dwight Escalera, who actually used to build boats up at Pearson when they built them. So we did a lot of work prepping that boat and making sure that boat was, as best as it could be.
I have one more. And Mary's pointed this out to me in our conversations, right? So, before you do a race, there's an inspection list. So, you can go through that inspection list and whatever the inspector's criteria is, but you, the skipper, you, the owners, really need to understand that. Because you can't inspect quality and all those things. I will tell you, what really influenced me when Mary about the boat was my first Bermuda race. The skipper of that boat said a lot of great things, but then the proof was not in the output. And in fact, much to my regret, I got to Bermuda, we were a top 10 finisher, and, hey, can you sign this? And this was all those preparations as a crew we were supposed to have done. And as Lydia can attest to, we did that in May prior to the race, to make sure the crew was accountable and understood how we were accountable to get those items done. And I've seen it happen since then. I won't mention a specific event, but you have to take that seriously. You just can't work through the inspection. And that gets back to kind of my career experience, Joe, right? You gotta know what you're doing. And if you just live to the inspections, you're gonna fail.
Yeah, I mean, the accountability, interesting, yes, he drives submarines, but what I do for a living is design and build and maintain the weapon systems on those submarines. So, and that, you can't inspect quality, right? You have to just have, it has to be a cultural thing, it has to be a mindset. No checklist is gonna make sure that your product is quality or reliable.
Senator in the back.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. This is very insightful to hear this. I was in the race ahead of you guys. We didn't hear the full story. Pieces came through during the race. First of all, preparation, phenomenal. The word was, Mary, your communication skills were phenomenal. And I'd like you to speak a bit more on that. Two comments. Bermuda race going forward is now requiring an emergency pump from the outcome from your situation, which is great. I'm curious if you have any other thoughts of things along that line. You mentioned about life rafts, but the main question I have is, without seeing the blood, because no one jumped in the water, how sure are you that you did something versus that you got it?
Quite sure. Go ahead. Studio is driving. And Bill was on deck too.
Yeah, three-part question. I guess I can speak to hitting something. I know during our Marblehead Halifax the previous year, we think we hit maybe a sunfish or something. So we've had an impact before that we kind of all felt and knew what that felt like. This was very clearly like a big metal thing. It was not a whale. It was not anything squishy or biomass or anything like that. It was a hard impact. There was a big metallic screechy noise, and the boat stopped a little bit short. So we're fairly confident that we hit something, and the running theory is that it may have been a shipping container, but we didn't get eyes on it, so we can't confirm.
You want to talk about communication? Oh, yeah, about communications. Yeah, we both come out of a dead sleep, right? We had great people up on deck, and as Lydia, she didn't want to give up the helm because the sailing was great, surfing up and down the waves, and full moon. So yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I had the placard right there posted. I had made it, the standard one you can get from the Coast Guard. I modified it with our call sign, our MMSI number, and laminated and put it right there. And I want to tell you, as I pick up the VHF, I'm looking at that to make sure I hit all the points. So, and did the Mayday, and was talking to other boats, and someone could hear really well, someone couldn't. But yeah, it was. And then, we were very good about our communications. We had Iridium Go was our satellite communications, and the race, based on what had happened in the 2022 race, had very, defined requirements on communications and how often you had to check. And everyone on our boat knew how to use our Iridium Go phone. It was dedicated. It was right there. It had no password. They knew how to do it all, and we took it seriously.
So one funny moment in that, before we get off the boat discussion, so Mary's like, oh, I got the phone. So we had like an old iPhone, right? I point over, the base unit is still attached to the boat because Mary needed that. And we did use that on Kaylee. With respect to the conclusions of the structural piece, I think the words are best that we likely hit something. I think if you look, and this picture doesn't quite show it where the upper rudder stem is, but in that video we took a still, you do see some damage forward where the rudder helm wheel is. And so this is looking aft forward. When I did my initial assessment 90 seconds into the event, I'm actually looking to the right and below and see where that whole structure could rotate forward where the helm was. There was actually, because we're featured in the documentary, that, you can see a video which is not necessarily conclusive from the radar mast, but you just hear a screech noise. You see the boat round up about 50 degrees and a shudder. So those are the only conclusive facts, I think, that we know. And there's been some analysis, which when that report comes out, the community will be able to see what the structural assessment is.
Yeah, and the report he's talking about is Bermuda Race Committee did 3 studies: structural, communications, and abandoning ship. So I think one of those reports, and they covered the 3 boats that sank, as part of the race, the 2 during the race, and then a solution on the way back. So encourage you to read those all when they come out.
Yeah, one thing. So if you, I think, so a month ago, the Newport Bermuda Race did a preliminary assessment where the 3 committees reported out. So that video is available online at US Sailing or Newport Bermuda Race. So I encourage you to take a look at that piece. Like, for example, the preparation video, which was run last night, is available online, so you can take a look at that. So all it gets back to this, there's a stream of information out there that it's just, you as a skipper or crew need to just go look at, study, and learn.
More questions? Yeah,
So, I'm not an engineer, but you guys are, and so I know you're the technical things, but I was there on the dock when you all got off, and I noticed something interesting, and it was that the young people weren't really emotional. They were relieved and ready to celebrate. But you two, which I understand, and Bill, and the older folks got off and were suddenly very emotional. It was heartbreaking. And I know it took you by surprise, Bill, but I just wondered if you would talk about that a little bit. What were your emotions after you could let down, after you got off the rescue boat?
Okay, you're asking engineers to talk about emotions. We have video for that. What did you say? How many people on board were engineers? 7?
Yeah.
7 engineers on board. So, okay. Although Eric technically doesn't have an engineering degree, he just has a physics degree and a nuclear whatever. So
I'm not emotional.
No, I mean, just seeing everybody and the reception that we had from our ground crew and the receptions that we had from Bermuda Race and just being on land, knowing that we made it safely. It was, the 48 hours that we had on Kaylee, that was tough. I mean, you have that many people on a small boat, a wet boat, nowhere to sleep. They were so gracious with us, but it was tough on them, it was tough on us, and I had that up there a minute ago. They wanted to finish racing, so we couldn't do anything except for kind of hang out, maybe mop up some water, wash a dish. They did end up getting 3rd place. Eric says 1 race, 2 boats, 3rd place. We'll see. I mean, the crew that met us there, it was just amazing, but it was great relief. Just hugging your family. Yes, Bill?
So I can mention some stuff about the emotions. Everybody on the boat, at one point or another,
you have to give it back. All of you that know Bill.
Had an emotional response. Eric can describe his when he was on Kaylee. Mary had it at a different time. As soon as I got off the boat, Lisa asked me, "How are you?" And that's when I lost it. It's kind of like, the adrenaline's running and stuff, and we were just, thinking about the stuff that was there. But, I mean, everybody had a response. It's just when and what that response was, based, I don't know, is it engineer versus non-engineer?
What is your response?
Oh, I was a mess. I think on the boat, everybody was kind of pretty trying to keep it together. People were pretty quiet, pretty reserved. There's a little bit of gallows humor. I think for Sam and I, when we saw banter coming by us at the finish, that's when we both started to really feel it, but but I threw up every day in Bermuda. I was so sick. I was a mess. I was in the haze the whole time. I think the events unfolded so calmly on Alliance, and we were sort of following a checklist. We were doing what needed to get done. We were on Kaylee and sort of just sitting there for a while, and I think there was no real decompression time. It didn't feel scary because there was always that list of like, okay, what needs to get done next? While we were on Alliance, while we were losing a boat and kind of preparing for that, I don't think any of us were like particularly outwardly emotional about it because I think we were just in that offshore mindset of like, okay, like what needs to get addressed? How do we manage whatever situation or like what conditions we're dealing with now? And it wasn't until we got back to land that I think a lot of that started to kind of like come up and you had to like deal with it once the adrenaline wore off. So it wasn't fun. I definitely would not recommend it. I think everybody, while we were in such close quarters, people did, like quite a good job holding it together so that it didn't like turn into a big emotional tornado on the boat. But then once we got back to shore, you're right, there were a lot of feelings, I think, from all of
Your
us.
question, Eddie, are you worried about it?
Yeah.
I guess I think I've known Eric 10 years and I've seen him cry once, and that was in Bermuda.
Yeah, so I always, and no fault to Kaylee, right? I call my 52 hours on Kaylee the most miserable sailing hours of my life. Because, and I am truly thankful that Lydia got some videos because it helps understand what potentially happened from an evidence piece. But I'll tell you, when we got to Bermuda, once again, the community, like, oh, there's this boat with all these people. Go to the dock. So that, we were happy about that. And my piece was, as we get to the dock, I'm like, okay, I lost that paperwork where we got to check the crew in. I had all the passports, and then there's our insurance broker on the dock. I think I need to go talk to that dude. And then I go out to check in, and the receptionist, outside, as you go and check in for immigration and the race, and I said, I'm that skipper from Alliance. We lost the boat, so I don't have my paperwork. And like 3 times I had explained that. And then Patty Young came out, recognizing that I was in trauma, and so she took care of everything else. So once again, if you are the recipient of a distressed crew, you got to understand what is going on in the minds of the crew, because we are semi-professionals, right? So when you kind of read the rescue report, there was Solution had a professional Coast Guard rescue, right? That's what we kind of train for. But when you rescue each other in a community, those are just things for you to think about. And fortunately, all the human actions required for our successful rescue went well. Coop, you had a question?
Yeah, just can you talk to the issue about doubling the crew on a 40-footer, and you still got another 2 days to go, about the food and the water supply? Because you just cut the food for the crew on Kaylee enough.
Well, they had Ryan Mann who provisioned the boat, so there was enough food. But no, they did. They had enough food. We did bring, we did bring water with us. Part of the water was these bricks, aqua bricks, I think they're called. We brought 9 gallons with us because we didn't know what their situation was. I mean, a lot of boats carry the bare minimum. And even food. We also got food, and I learned that, goldfish bags, how they're silver on the inside, that really is waterproof. So, we threw snack bars and things like that and goldfish into a bag and brought it with us. But they actually did have enough food, and they were very gracious sharing it with us.
And actually, one of those, when we had a little bit of time remaining, actually, I think it was Lydia's bag. I won't mention it. Her bag, the crew actually had issued a, like a 3-gallon bag or something, yeah. Small. So you could wear your offshore gear, safety equipment, and then you had a little bag that you could then carry your other stuff. So Lydia's bag got dumped out. Eddie filled it with, protein bars and stuff, not knowing. And I'll tell you, Ryan Hand, who is credited for the video, he has chickens, and so he had this big bag of hard-boiled eggs. That was my hero for the next couple of days.
Okay, anything else? No, that's good.
Do you have another question?
All set?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so you're, from someone who's transitioned to cruising, you're transitioning to cruising, you're gonna be doing some distance sailing. From somebody who can't sleep at night when you're, shorthanded cruising, are you ever gonna be able to sleep at night on a boat?
You can answer that from our return delivery.
You just got to
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, so we bought Minerva down there in Annapolis, and in October, we spent quite a few weekends down there getting her ready. Eddie was down there helping us, then Bill and Lydia and Lisa, the five of us brought her back, and it was right around the time, just after the Annapolis Boat Show, and there was a pretty good storm offshore. What do they call it, backdoor cold front?
Yeah.
But so we intended on going, sailing her directly home. Instead, we stopped at the
Chesapeake City.
Chesapeake City and Cape May. So we made 2 stops because waiting out the weather window. But yeah, so we felt confident in his crew. We split up the watches between the 5 of us, and he did sleep on the delivery.
You gotta put a watertight lock in the back of the trunk.
So
I mean, is there room for it, is the question.
Well, so the sailor is a little more compartmentalized. Back there, it's not fully like the 121, but we did look at that feature.
I tell you one of the first thing Eric buys for the boat, or we buy at Eric's request, is a gory prop, because he has the need for speed, right, even under power. And then the first thing I bought was another pump. So you see that 3,700 gallon, the one I bought, there's 2 of them together. They operate independently, but they're attached to each other, and you can use the same hose. And I get it, and we don't even know where to store it. The thing is massive, but I got, what's that? So that's 7,400 gallons per hour.
Well, and there he goes, yeah, this, perhaps I went a little overboard, but we did find, was it a 3-inch non-collapsible hose?
Accordion
hose, right? So that it can go up and over, and then and once again, put alligator clips on it. This is an insurance policy system.
And we don't have to worry about weight.
That's twice the displacement of the boat in water per hour. There you go.
I think we're just about time. So we're gonna wrap it up here. Do you guys have any final thoughts you want to share?
Hey, I really want to thank Sail Newport. I think one of Mary and I's goal is, although we don't want to keep reliving the event, but I think the things that we did that resulted in success, we want to share that with the community in whatever way we can. Safety at Sea, we're actually going down to Annapolis tomorrow to speak, we're the kickoff speaker, so to speak, with Safety at Sea at the Naval Academy. And by the way, it was 4 years ago, my first Safety at Sea, when I did offshore sail training, which is my roots. So we're going to speak there and get to know more of the community and what they work on. But I appreciate everyone coming tonight, and I really like to thank Sail Newport and Lydia, Bill, and our crew, and Dancer. Over.
That's it.